Hi, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to this amazing panel discussion. My name is Heather Ireland Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of the Jazz Institute of Chicago. And I would like to pass it over to our wonderful moderator, Amina Dickerson. I know her as a cultural and art doyen, somebody I've looked up to for a long time, a coach, a mentor, a consultant. I could go on with all the organizations that she's worked with and all the people that she's helped. But for today, we'll call her that art supporter. And she also happens right now to be the interim director of the Smart Museum at the University of Chicago. So Amina, thank you for being here. And I'm looking forward to the journey that we have together.
Thank you. I am so excited about today. How often do we get to come together and just reflect on the histories of our organizations and the great riches that they bring to us? Today, we're going to explore three of a number of treasures that exist on the South Side of Chicago that have been instrumental in the arts community for a very, very long time. We'll learn a little bit about each of them. I'll introduce their executive directors, and then we're going to have a great conversation about what it means to do this work in 2021, building on the legacies that each of these institutions has inherited. I want to welcome the members of these three organizations, ETA, the Southside Community Arts Center, and of course, the Jazz Institute of Chicago. We should say that Heather Ireland Robinson was the instigator for today, and we're thrilled that this has happened. Also want to do a quick shout out to our support team, Mashawn Hardy and Ariana, who are behind the scenes. A little later, we're going to ask you to put a question in the chat if you're here with us live today. And for those of you who are joining us in the recorded version of this, I think you're going to find this to be an interesting afternoon. So again, welcome to everybody. And we're going to start with a really short video on each of these organizations, one at a time. And I'll introduce our panel after their institution has been shared with you via video. So let's start with the Southside Community Arts Center.
Welcome to the Southside Community Arts Center, located in Chicago, Illinois, in the historic Bronzeville community at 3831 South Michigan. Founded in 1940, the center is one of the oldest African-American art centers in the U.S. and was designated a Chicago landmark and national treasure. While taking pride in our rich past, we seek to build on our legacy and innovatively serve as an artist and community-centered resource with programs, exhibitions, and events that inspire. Our mission is to conserve, preserve, and promote the legacy and future of African American art and artists while educating the community on the value of art and culture. The Southside Community Arts Center showcases established artists and nurtures emerging creators. Through educational and artistic programs, exhibitions, talks, tours, and more, the center strives to engage, educate, and connect community members to African American art and artists. We hope you will follow us on social media and learn more about us on our website at sscartcenter.org, and how you can be a part of the legacy by joining, contributing, and volunteering. We look forward to hearing from you.
So I am pleased and delighted to introduce Monique Brinkman-Hill, who has been a little bit more than a year the executive director of the Southside Community Arts Center. And I have to tell you that Monique brings an incredible experience. She's been a corporate leader. She's an avid art collector herself. She's been involved with the Southside Community Arts Center over many years. And she is also a professional coach and a mother. And so she's balancing all of that and bringing all of those skills together with all of the work and the experience of her role at the Northern Trust Company for many, many years. So Monique, I just want to say welcome and just say hi to everybody. Okay, she's going to unmute and you're going to hear her voice in a minute. Next up, we're going to be introduced to an organization that is celebrating 52 years this year, and that is the Jazz Institute of Chicago. Heather Ireland Robinson, who is the director and is bringing such great new energy to a long-standing institution. Heather is also one of those multi-talented people. She's been an actress, a writer, a director, an arts executive, not only now at the Jazz Institute, but previously she worked a little bit at the Southside Community Arts Center and at the Beverly Arts Center. And she is also now the executive director of the Jazz Institute of Chicago, a little bit over 2.5, maybe 3 years. So without further ado, let's learn about ETA Creative Arts Foundation.
Hi, I'm Kai Elzabar, the Executive Director of ETA Creative Arts Foundation, the theater where magic happens. But like all theaters across the country, our theater was shuttered due to COVID-19 in 2020. And so we did a pivot, postponed our 49th season, and produced our first virtual season, Voices of Protest, an 8-part series featuring the voices of our historic game changers. Here, take a look.
This gave an American Negro a sense of himself for the first time beyond a savage or a clown. It has created and will create a great many conundrums. One of the many great things that the white world doesn't know, but I think I do know, is that black people are just like everybody else. I'm stating very seriously, and this is not an overstatement. I picked the cotton, I carried it to the market, and I built the railroad under someone else's whip for nothing.
For nothing.
Hope you liked what you saw and that you'll check us out at www.etacreativearts.org and follow us on all our social media platforms.
Okay, so the voice that you just heard was the executive director and CEO of ETA Creative Arts Foundation, a place that the founder, Amina Joan Brown, used to talk about it as a place where the magic happens. Kai is making certain that that magic continues and brings with her a whole boatload of experience as a director, a writer. She calls herself the script doctor. Actually, that's the work that she did when she went out to LA. But she's returned to Chicago in 2014 to be the first executive director, female executive director of the Chicago Defender. And we are so happy now that she's bringing those skills to ETA. She has had training all over the place, working with BET and Disney as a writer, training as a writer as well at Lake Forest College and at Northwestern University, where she's got an MA, and also an MA in interdisciplinary studies from Columbia College. So welcome, Kai, and welcome all of that wonderful, wonderful experience. Let's get into the discussion, because I know that's what everybody is here for. So I guess I want to start by asking you all a little bit about the sort of place of your organization in the ecosystem of cultural activity here in Chicago. What is the role, the unique role that you feel your institution plays, and why is it important for your organization to exist? So who would like to start us off? Why don't we start with you, Heather, as our host, and then I'll ask Monique and then Kai in that order, okay? So sure. Why do you exist?
Sure, thanks. Well, like the video said, we were founded in 1969, and really our mission is kind of general, to promote and nurture jazz in all its forms. But the key at the time, and it still is in all its forms. Like, how many different kinds of jazz are there? And kind of my vision is, how is jazz evolving? You know, where are we going to stand 50 years from now and look back on this moment and say, hey, that was going on and it changed the face of, just like we're talking about bebop and some of the work that Miles and so many people did, 50, 40, 60 years ago. And as far as the Jazz Institute is concerned, a big part of what we do, of course, is free programming, from the Jazz Festival to JazzCity in Chicago Parks. And we've also got education programming. So that's training the next generation of jazz musicians and jazz lovers. Like, just as much as we need horns playing and drums banging. We need ears to hear and hearts to understand the music and to think enough of it to keep it going. So we've got programs in schools, our residency programs. Musicians go right in with the teachers to teach about jazz. So they're helping the teachers, they're helping the students. We have a student council program where we've got young students. You know, it can be very lonely being a 17-year-old jazz musician out in the world where people maybe aren't thinking that way. So we get them together to learn to play and also just to network together. And, you know, our JazzCity program is that program that is in our parks that's free. So you may live in the neighborhood, you're thinking about something else, you're coming to the park for something, and you happen to hear jazz. It's also been a big draw for our members who visit neighborhoods all across this amazingly diverse city of ours. So like we said last year, our hashtag was keep the music playing. We're keeping the music playing and always looking to the future to make sure there are musicians to play and honor the music.
Wonderful. Thank you. Monique, what about you? Why is it important for the Southside Community Art Center to exist?
So when I think about it, this is our 80th anniversary. We are 80 years in of a mission that really is about conserving, preserving, and promoting the legacy of the African-American artists and just art in general. And when I think about why we originally founded, I go back and I look at the words of Dr. Margaret Burroughs, one of our founders. There was no place in Chicago in 1940 for an African-American artist to gather. And that art transcended from, you know, fine arts, photography, oral, written, everything. And so that became the place, the nucleus. And so when we think about the number of amazing artists who've come before us and those that have continued and those that will be there in the future, what's been really important has been an opportunity for the Southside Community Arts Center to really bring together some of the greatest minds and talents in the last 80 years of individuals who might not have had a new place to go or a place to go in general. And so when we look at pivots and changes, it still is the nucleus for established artists, amazing future talents, emerging talents. And so it still presents itself as that place that's home. When we had a group of students came in before the pandemic and we closed, unless we were by appointment. And they came in and they said, wow, this is, you know, they were 16-year-olds. And they said, this is the most peace that I had. And they walked around and it was just, there's something about going, what they call coming home, because that's how they felt. They just felt a peace. And how interesting and ironically wonderful that all three, Heather and Kai, both have been a part of the Southside Community Arts Center as EDs. And so this legacy, it just continues. And that's why it's been really important, because art needs to be seen, heard, and felt.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kai, tell us a little bit about why ETA is such an important institution.
Well, you already stated that it's the theater where magic happens. And the reason it happens there is because we tell our stories in poetry, complete with all of our idiosyncrasies, our nuances and isms. And we do that unapologetically. And it's important that we do so reflecting all of our African-American experiences, both in America and the world. And in doing so, we are actually celebrating the contributions that African-Americans have made and continue to make. And as part of the community, what we're doing is not only entertaining, but we are sharing information, we're enlightening, we're introducing them to the various cultural aspects that make theater theater. So whether that's dance or visual arts or music, and then we also have the technical aspect of that. So we bring a lot to the table in terms of helping to train people in the theater, as well as, if you take, what I mean is, if you take an acting class, you don't necessarily have to become an actor, but you may become a very articulate speaker. So it offers an awful lot.
Yes, the arts bring that sense of discipline and confidence, self-confidence. They are marvelous ways that we learn to collaborate and work with others. The creative spirit is something that you need in all aspects of work and life. So I just want to celebrate with you the work that your institutions have done and continue to do. And that brings up a question for me that has to do with the cultural root of the work that you are doing. You know, you are agencies, entities, organizations that are rooted in a particular heritage. And I wonder what you see as the opportunity and the strength that being an African-American centered organization or coming out of an African-American root in terms of the discipline itself and the form of music in the case of the Jazz Institute. What is the sort of particular authority that you think your institutions have and bring to the work that other organizations may not have? And whoever would like to go first, just unmute and go forward. Okay, Monique, thank you. And then
okay,
Heather.
My technical part of unmuting might be a slight delay. But when I think about your question, the first thing that comes to my mind is we represent the voices of our community. Kai spoke about telling our stories, and art tells a story in a different way. When we look at, the ancient Egyptian pyramids and tombs, they told their story in art. We tell our story, and what we've seen, if I don't think about anything else in this 2021 phase of our lives, is that we have to be the people who tell our stories. We happen to tell it through photography, through fine arts, through a mixed medium, but it's telling our story authentically, creatively, through the eyes of the Black artists that come to the center and that are part of our, community. And so that's what I think about and when I think about your question.
Mm-hmm. Heather?
I think for jazz specifically, it is the music of African-American people. If you've read anything that I've written over, my letters to the members, et cetera, grants, rooted in African rhythms, having come here and being born out of African experiences, both positive and negative, because that's what we have to do. Coming, taking root in New Orleans and coming up the Mississippi River to Chicago and going out to New York and Kansas City and all these all points in between. Mm-hmm. I think telling that origin story of jazz is critical because it's the truth, but also it helps our children. And even us, we talk a lot about how children, we need to see ourselves. Adults need to see themselves authentically represented too, in order to feel like you're a part of this world. And let's take that a step further and really talk about jazz as American history. That's a story for all of us, and it's music that can be shared by all. And yes, there are harmonies that connect us to European rhythms that have influenced jazz as well. But that origin story, I think, is so important. It's a source of pride for all of us. It's a source of, it's the truth of our heritage. One of our JazzLink students, Micah Collier, he graduated from the High School of the Arts, and we had him on NBC, and he got to talk to Lester Holt, who happens to play the bass, by the way. And so they were just kind of chopping it up. It's pretty, please look that up. I'll send it to you all, the clip. But Micah said at one point, this is the music of the Black man. And the way he said it and the way he stood up a little taller when he said it, it just brought tears to my eyes because we don't always hear that part of the story first. And so I take tremendous responsibility in making sure that part of it is heard. There's also a social justice aspect of jazz. There's so much we could talk about with the history, but that the music of the Black man, I think, is critical.
Mm-hmm. Kai, do you want to weigh in here? Because I know that ETA has always created that space and that opportunity for young playwrights, for emerging playwrights to bring their voices. So talk a little bit about why ETA is so important.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we have done our call for plays this month, February. So go to our website if you're interested in doing that. But I think it's important to understand the value of culture, and in particular, the arts, because the arts, to piggyback on what you were saying, Monique, it really is how we express ourselves authentically. And in doing so, we're always telling story, whether it's through music, dance, the visual arts, or actually on stage. And it's something that can't be denied. So when we have the authority to do that, we're bringing a certain kind of purity, of that essence to it. And I mentioned earlier, unapologetically, you know, we don't have to apologize. In Hollywood, I sat around the table where you had writers, there's always a bunch of us. And I remember when one of the white producers said, well, in this particular scene, that's not Black enough. The character was a female character. And I said, well, what do you mean? Because I was trying to, what do you mean? And he just said, well, you know, she's not sassy enough or something, whatever his concept or his perception of who we are, not acknowledging that we're not monolithic, that we express ourselves in different ways. Of course, we know that, and we can bring that to the table. But I remember asking him, well, when was the last time you were a Black woman? You know, but the point is that we get to do that from that stance of having lived it, known it, you know, and having experienced it.
This is a great, thank you. This is a great sort of connection to another question I have for all of you. As women leaders stepping into these roles, I often think back to our foremothers and to other sources of inspiration, and the decision that you made to do this work in the arts at all. I mean, you know, you, Monique in particular, who were in corporate America, and you made a choice to come and do this work in this way. So I'm curious about what was a formative experience that you might have had that that led you to making the decision to be involved, engaged, a producer in the arts?
So thank you for that question, Amina, because the person that I want to talk about is my mother. My mother was the first person who introduced me to art. As a kid, she would drag me, and I call it dragging because at, 12, 13, that's kind of how you feel about your parent taking you all these places. It's not until you become an adult that you recognize and realize just how meaningful and impactful that experience was. My mom passed in this past year in April, and as I reflected on who she was to me and all of the things that she gave me, one of the things that she gave me the most is a love and appreciation of art and a love and appreciation of music and theater. So she introduced me as a kid to so much. And as I thought about it and reflected, and it's funny because I didn't really reflect on that until I was having a conversation, because someone asked me, how did you transition from corporate to a not-for-profit arts center? And I thought about, I've always been in the arts. I've been a collector for almost 20 years. I have loved and appreciated the art community and the artists. And so when I think about who really was the person who was most meaningful and impactful, I'd have to give it to that little lady, Sherry Diane Brinkman, because she was the one who instilled in me. And so that's how I know the importance of instilling in our kids. And Heather's point of, and also adults, because so many adults have not seen a reflection, depending on how and where you were raised, have not seen a reflection of their heritage it's certainly not been in the mass media. And it's not, the reflection that you want to see on the news. So that's how I would answer that question. From the most passionate part of my heart was my mother's introduction.
Absolutely. I know moms are really essential in this work, right? And in helping us begin to see ourselves and see what's possible, what our possibilities are. Kai, I'm going to call on you and ask you, what was a formative experience for you that led you to commit your life to the arts?
Well, my mother certainly played a major role in the arts, but growing up, we had to take dance, piano. I played the violin, theater classes. We had to go to charm school, the whole thing. So it was, and then I acted in high school. I played Beneatha, Raisin in the Sun. And it just continued. I was always drawn to it, not to mention that my mother's brother was actually a fine artist. So we participated in those kinds of things, but I also heard all the time the value of it, because my father was a real, jazz aficionado, so to speak. And so we listened to all these things, and then he would talk to us about who the people were and how we used to live. The fact that, we all used to live next door to each other, whether you were a musician or a minister or the post office, and how everyone appreciated and valued one another. And I think for me, I always pursue that. But the real deal happened. I was a sophomore in college at Lake Forest, came into Chicago, went to Coomba Theater. It was some kind of theater weekend. And at the end of that evening, Amina Joan Brown and Val Gray Ward sat on the stage. And all I can remember is Amina throwing her hands back and saying, "Val, darling, what she said, we deserve the right to tell our own stories." And at that time, I was studying English, thinking about being a journalist maybe, but that really stuck with me. And then years later, at Indigo, I actually interviewed her and I shared that experience with her again. And she said, "Kai," she said, "that still stands. And not only do we reserve and deserve the right to do that, but we have the responsibility to do that." And so I take it very seriously, because I think expressing yourself through the arts is probably one of the most humane things we do, which separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom.
How wonderful, and what an extraordinary story. When you said the Amina move and the arms, we all saw it. We all know. Yes. And I love that you also called Val Gray Ward's name, because again, these are the foundation upon which our work really stands, and not just in Chicago, but nationally as well. So thank you for bringing our foremothers into this. Heather, what about you? What was a formative experience when you knew, oh, the arts is going to be my life?
Sure. I mean, I think like all of you ladies, being privileged and blessed to grow up in a house that valued art, whether that was going to see plays at the Goodman's Children's Theater next to the Art Institute. I absolutely fell in love with theater there. Hearing music in our home, same thing. My father, I'll give you a quarter if you can name the musician. And it's Ella Fitzgerald, it's this person. It was a blast for us. But my path is interestingly different, because it took me a lot to decide to go to theater school. I studied advertising in undergrad because that was the most creative thing I could possibly do in a world where I thought I had to be a doctor or a lawyer or a business person. And my parents were like, "Okay, that's great. But if you're going to be an actress, be an actress. Like, you need to go to graduate school." So I went to graduate school at DePaul. And my last year, I took a teaching class. And it changed as much as, yes, I will retire to acting. I'm not done. You will see me in commercials and on stages, in 10 years. But teaching really showed me how I could multiply the possibility of the arts. I taught very briefly. Our practicum was in a bilingual first grade class. And I was teaching the kids the Three Little Pigs. and these kids were making a lot of noise in the corner. I said, kids, I'm trying to work over here. What are you doing? And they said, Miss Heather, we're trying to make fire. They were with their bodies trying to figure out how to make the fire that the wolf would fall into. I was like, carry on. And I think from that moment, I saw how important it was to create opportunities for either for children to learn or for people to create. One of my first jobs in arts management was with the Gallery 37 program, with the Park District, with Ife, who I think is on here. And I saw there how important it is to have structure and programs and spreadsheets and money so artists can do their thing. And that's when I got bit by the nonprofit management. Like, I want to be here to make it possible for you all to paint murals. Don't think about anything but painting that mural, or, you know, doing some turns or acting. And so that's where providing these opportunities kind of layered on to my vision and what I hope for the world.
So, you know, as I listen to you, I hear how instrumental family and elders are in providing that introduction to the arts. It's not that, you know, as someone mentioned, it's not that you're going to do this as your full-time career, but the ways in which the arts can inform your sense of how to do whatever role you choose to pursue in life is very important. And so I want to ask you about that relationship of you as institutions with community and what it is that you believe that you bring to community, but also as organizations. I'm proud to say I'm a member of every one of your organizations and have been a supporter. What is the support that you need from the African American community?
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
I think it's important first for us as the organizations to entrench, so to speak, our communities with information about who and what we are, and then invite them in. And once in, then they will be able to recognize and experience, you know, the benefits that they would gain from that. There's so many things that have gone askew, so to speak, in terms of what used to be in terms of community. So one of the things that we do at ETA when we open the doors again is on Saturdays, we have a senior program in the morning from 9 to 12. And we also have our students there. And we have a certain time where we actually have them come together to, like, the seniors get to go see what the youth are doing and the youth get to check out what the seniors do, just so that they meet each other. They find out that they're not so different. You understand what I'm saying? Because we don't really have our grandparents in the homes like once they were there with us. And some of our seniors have taken on the cause to actually sponsor youth. And then they actually have conversations. This is important, you know, so that's a part of the role that the community, you know, can play, is just being involved, being engaged, understanding the importance for your child to participate in the cultural arts. Because as you have just said, Amina, we're talking about the elders. We all grow up and we become the elders. What will you have to offer to someone else? And so that's why it's important. When I say we, I mean all of our organizations are important to our communities and they to us.
That's terrific. I think I want to, unless you have something important to add, I want to get to some of our other questions because time is running on. And I think that, Kai, you actually have said it all for all of us. How do we engage community, and how does community stay engaged to pass that on, pass that back, bring someone else along on the journey of creative exploration? I wanted to ask you about what this last year has meant. Like so many other organizations, Certainly in the cultural sector in Chicago, we've had a profound impact of COVID. We've experienced the closings, the loss of income and revenue, and all of that. We've all had to pivot and think about different ways of bringing our product, our work, our resources to be there for the community at a time perhaps where they needed it more than ever. You know, I cannot tell you how many people have said, I just can't wait to go into a museum again. I need to be with the art. I need to hear the music. I need to see the play. I have the slowest rolling siren going on out here. So let me just quickly ask, what is your vision for your organization as you emerge from the COVID moment? And what do you need, again, from the community and from Chicago to help you build back better? Monique, and then maybe Heather, you can bounce in. And I'm going to ask you all to be succinct so that we can get to more questions, okay?
Okay. So the first thing, I just want to quickly hit on the first part of it. So COVID. So I came on board December 2019. I said December, January, February, COVID. So it was like, we ended up, unfortunately, needing to lay off some staff members. And when we talk about pivoting, it was a clear pivot because we were not prepared for any type of virtual programming at that point in time. And so when I think about all that this past year has meant, it has taught us new ways of doing business. It has created new opportunities. When people think about, what have you all been doing, since you've been closed? Well, technically, we really haven't been closed. We've been busy, extremely busy, bringing ourselves up to speed in terms of virtual programming. We upgraded our website. We've got a lot of programs that we're running and doing. And it's, for me, when I talk about what we need, for the center to be 80 years old, I can't tell you the number of people who say that they've never heard of us, that they didn't even know that we existed. People who say, I ride past 3831 every day when I was going to work, and I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was somebody's big house. And so one of the things that is incumbent on us, and that is to message our story through past this pandemic so that we can share the amazing history that the Southside Community Arts Center brings. And we need to give them, the public, the community, the supporters, we need to give them information so they understand our history. We've been really focused on our social media as well as a website and a number of other things to just get our story out. So that's what I would say at this point has been a critical function of where we've been and what's going to be critical for us as we move forward, in addition to our regular programming and the things that we have planned.
Great. Heather?
Sure. I mean, I could talk a lot about the Jazz Institute of Chicago's tremendous staff and how we quickly pivoted online. We moved 80% of our programming online. I will let you go to our website and all of our social media to see that, because I really want to talk about, also, I think our staff has gotten closer. We see each other like this, every week, and just talking more and just doing more together socially before meetings. But I keep saying one of the biggest heartbreaks to me last year, in addition to loss and all that, was that we could not be in the community. Our numbers quadrupled in terms of reach and being able to reach more people online, but we missed that grandmother that was coming to a swimming lesson at JazzCity. We missed that person that may have been walking by these beautiful outdoor summer concerts that we had and maybe had never heard jazz before. That student, again, walking in their neighborhood, like, what's that music? And that kind of community gathering. So we're working this summer to recreate some of that, projections on walls in the neighborhood, so you could just be driving by and see a jazz concert projected and safely gather. So that's really been my vision, and the kind of programming that we're working on for the summer is how do we get back to the neighborhoods safely and with the same quality. We've had to up our tech game as well. We need to look good, we need to sound good. It's not as cute anymore to just be in your basement with your phone like this. And we owe it to the music, we owe it to our musicians. And so I think we just need people to recognize that, come out. I appreciate what you said, Monique. Like, it's on us to make sure that the word is getting out and that people know that we're still here and that we're still spreading the joy of jazz and the importance of culture and that idea of the legacy of the music.
Thank you. Kai, do you want to add anything? Unmute, yeah.
I think, the main message has been said, that we have to continue to engage with our community, and COVID has exposed to us or introduced to us the various ways that we can. And so now we just have to continue. That's all.
So I hear that, and that's great. So visibility marketing, continuing to get the message out through the various channels. And I also know that each of your organizations as a nonprofit has been struggling for financial resources. Perhaps, as in the case Monique identified, the technical capacity and the skills that may be in the community are in the community. We know they're in the community of people who can bring that capability and that counsel to us in our institutions. If you had a wish for something that in this post-COVID moment would happen for your organization, what would that wish be? What would you like to see that's going to be vastly different because of something that happens in the next 12 months?
I'll say it because you touched on it, Amina, and I'm glad you opened that door. Even you saying, I am a member of each of these organizations, I'm going to sound like our membership pitch, but it's very true. Those dollars help so much, whether you're the $25 member or whether you heard Heather on the JazzCity stage and you decided to drop just $5 in the bucket. It really does make a difference. For us, it helps us create free programming and keep free programming going. But, the word nonprofit doesn't mean we don't need money to work. We've got staff, we've got artists. It's one of our missions that we pay artists. We don't say, could you just, even our young people, they get paid for what they do because that's their career and it's a valuable thing. So membership and donations really does mean a lot. And it's an easy way to support. I've been very pleased with a lot of the Chicago funders. I have to give it up to a lot of, or I won't name anybody specifically, but a lot of the foundations have recognized how hard this is. And they've either increased fund. That doesn't mean we don't need members, y'all. I'm not saying we don't still need your membership and that, but a lot of people have recognized, this is hard. Don't worry about a final report, Heather. I'm going to call you and feel free to have your coffee and your children hanging off of your face at the time. We're just going to talk for 15 minutes. Thank you. So to have funders recognize that, because they are our lifeblood, has meant a lot. Or extra funding, Ford Foundation. A lot of places are changing up the city, the state, the way that they fund to make it easier on organizations. And that has been a tremendous help. And I think it's going to be a disruption that continues past COVID. They did it because it was COVID and it was hard for us because we're home. But I think they're starting to go, oh, wait a minute. Let's make it easier on y'all because there's so much you have to do already. Asking for $5 and having to write a 29-page interpretive dance is not easy. Not. We'll do it, but it's not easy. So I've been really proud of that change.
Yeah, I think that there are a number of converging efforts that are the result of both COVID and the racial reckoning that is still underway. Even before that had happened, there was a commitment from the city to do serious investment on the south and west side of the city. And all of this has provoked funders to think differently about how they award funding, about what levels, what's the equitable level for funding smaller organizations with the distinguished history. Look at this, 50, 52 years, 80 years. I mean, there is staying power for these organizations, but why are they still getting funded at this emerging startup level? And that recognition, I think, is starting to sink in.
And just really, while I'm on this soapbox, just really quickly, and for every one of us that knows the table and where to go, there are 100 other organizations that have no idea where to begin. So I'm always thinking about those other smaller organizations.
Well, that brings me to my next question. Thank you. You all are so great at teeing up my questions. And that has to do with the collaborative spirit of arts organizations. Rather than seeing we've got a music organization, a visual arts organization, a theater organization here, and unfortunately, a finite pool of money. And so what I'm struck by is this collaborative nature of how you work, or how you've been thinking about bringing your stories out, how you collaborate both in terms of time and programming. And I'm wondering what you see as the future of that kind of collaboration and what it can mean for the growth of our institutions on the South Side.
I think we're going to see more of it, Amina. I think it's important. You had asked us earlier, why did we think it was important for us to come together? I saw it as invaluable in changing the narrative about women, number one, coming together. We saw the merit, each of us, in what we were doing. We already have an appreciation, for the arts. And of course, they cross-pollinate, you know what I'm saying? If you do something if you have an exhibition at the Southside Community Arts Center, there may be music there. There's a piano, sitting in the gallery. And same thing at ETA. I see us collaborating. I would like to see something like what went on in Atlanta at the Black Arts Festival, where you engage the entire city, so we can engage all of our cultural arts organizations. But I think it's important for us to understand that we are not competing, that what we are doing is really the same thing. We are helping to enlighten our communities, to engage them, and also to just advance it in some sort of way. As we grow, we can really help to become, placemakers in cause and effect, to have more businesses to come into our communities. So I see us as being invaluable, and in working together, we can do so much more.
I just want to piggyback, Kai, because that is one of the first things people hear when they see women, and especially Black women. They'll say, "Oh, they're not going to be collaborative." I have found nothing to be so untrue as that statement. Many times, it is your sisters in the cause that help you, that call you. Did you know about this? Did you support this? And they have been tremendously helpful to move organizations. We are unstoppable. We saw that. We saw that recently down in Georgia. We saw that when we collectively get together, we are so much stronger than independent. And it is not about it's us or them. It's us. We're all telling a similar story, just in different ways. And so I found for this past year for the Southside Community Arts Center, it was important for me to collaborate with different organizations for a number of reasons. One, to lift, to help, to learn. And then when Heather gathered and reached out and said, "Hey, would you guys be interested? I've got this idea." It was like, absolutely. Absolutely, I would be interested in participating in something that would retell a different story about us as organizations, us as Black women. And I loved it. And I'm so glad that we're here together. And Amina, that you are our moderator. It's to me, my heart is full.
Ditto that.
Ditto
Yes.
that. I just wanted to say, is there anything you want to add to that? Because I love this idea. We are not competing with each other. We are working in unison. We are working parallel approaches to the same end, which is about engaging and serving and uplifting and celebrating that Black joy that is a part of the Black experience. Heather?
Well, Monique, you said it. I just wanted to shout each of you out again because it's true. I think I hit you on LinkedIn. Monique, we talked. We were going to have a quick conversation. We were on a Zoom for over an hour just talking about things. And Amina just immediately was like, yes, tell me what you need. So first of all, knowing that I could do that, but you all's immediate response, I didn't even tell you what it was. Everybody was just like, yes, I'm in. That, right. Like, what, you need something? Whether that was because it was Heather, we've done things together before, or whether it was because of Jazz or because of our need to stay connected and help each other. And that, so those moments of your yeses meant the world to me personally, but also to my organization. So just knowing that we're here for each other like that, it's incredible. And it raises the tide for all of us. And we know that's a very African way of thinking about, how can we help each other? It's not cutting it off. It's a net of gems. We reflect each other and, become more brilliant because of that.
So there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a crowd. And so I feel that this is the crowd that is really starting to mobilize a renewed kind of energy about that collaboration. I remember Obasi and, the AACM and just all of these organizations that, were able to cross-fertilize ideas, opportunities, energy. So I know we're going to go to questions in just a minute, but I just wanted to ask you to take a really short answer here about what is the vision that you have standing on the legacy or continuing the legacy that you have, standing on the shoulders of those who preceded you. What is your vision for your organization and its future? Really quick, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. One of the things that I am working on right now is actually completing the vision of an ETA campus building across the street. We will also have the Abana Joan Brown Park across the street where we would do outside theater and really creating a cultural hub that will embrace not only theater, but artist boutiques, artist workshops and studios, and invite our community to come and be a part of that.
That's great. Monique?
So we've shifted a little bit. I mean, we still want to maintain our mission. We're focused on what we call preserve, promote, progress. We've been well known to be a place where the established artists have been. What's clearly important and needed is that we continue to focus on those established artists, but we are opening the door and engaging a whole new group of emerging from a generational perspective artists, because there's so many voices that need to be heard. And what I want to make sure is that the Southside Community Arts Center is around in 80 more years. And we will only be able to do that by engaging and bringing in the next generation of artists alongside, I think someone mentioned it earlier, to collaborate. Now, I think when Kai was talking about bringing in the seniors with the youth, it is important. I was participating in a photography some talk the other day. And what was so important is the younger photographers were commenting on how amazing to listen to the older photographers talk about their experience. And that's what we need to do more collaboratively. From a building standpoint, we've got a couple of grants that we're working on specifically for our house. And certainly there's some gaps and opportunities there. But anybody who's been in the building knows that we've got some work to do. And so one of the future projects does involve improving our building, making it more accessible, upgrading, insides, doing masonry work. I mean, it's a number of things that need to be done because this is a, very old house. And so in order to make sure that it stands, we've got a lot of work to do on top of the programming. And so the future looks very bright for the Southside Community Arts Center.
One of the things that I've noted in the last couple of years is a broader rediscovery of the Southside Community Arts Center. And I think that there is a growing embrace from the city that understands the unique role that Southside Community Arts Center plays, has played, and continues to play, but needs more resources to do that. I mean, when you think about it, Southside, if my memory serves me, was one of a number of community art centers that were created in the WPA era, but it is the only one that has survived. And so that in and of itself is a source of celebration, that the temerity, the grit, the resilience of artists primarily, and a core group of supporters were able to sustain that institution through thick and thin and through some very difficult years. So when you look at that history, COVID, yes, we'll survive this because we have survived so many other challenges. And the same can be said of these other two organizations. I want to spend a minute talking about your relationship with that larger ecosystem of artists. And, I mentioned Obasi and AACM and some of the other organizations. And I know that the Jazz Institute does so much work with young people in schools, out of school, after school, summer school, in addition to providing opportunities for the jazz community and the artists in that community to play, let them play. So I'm going to ask each of you to maybe reflect a little bit on what has been the role that your organization has played in working with and supporting African-American artists. And what do you see, what can you offer as a kind of promise or direction for how that work is going to unfold going into the future, going into 2021? Kai, you look ready to start. Okay.
That's one of, that's a major aspect of our mission, is to not only produce, theater, but to provide the opportunity for training in all things theater, as well as to provide an exhibition space for the visual artists who actually are involved and engaged in theater. And people don't really, realize that art is the foundation of everything. I mean, people always say to me, well, I want to be in theater, but, my parents say, but you need to study something else in case you don't get a job. But here's the thing, what we failed to recognize. The buildings that we live in, they were designed by architects. Those are artists. The books that we read, they're designed by designers, illustrators, or whatever. That's art based. Even when you look at the cornflake box or the food that you buy, all the packaging, everything, the clothes that you wear, the jewelry, all of that is art based. So we have to really, understand and begin to implement that kind of knowledge in all that we do, whether it's through the visual arts at the Southside Community Arts Center or through music. And Heather, music is math, science, organized sound. And so, all of these, once we really get our community into our spaces, we have so many opportunities to really take them to the next level and have them enjoy it and have fun. I mean, if you think about it, how we learn our ABCs, you're singing a song, when you learn about math, it's all, art is involved in everything that we do. We just haven't been made to think that way. In fact, of late, we get upset. I saw somewhere where someone said, why is it that Black people have to always dance and sing something? Like, that's a bad thing. When you're working and you sing, it makes it a little easier, to get through the day. So all of these things have a scientific, if you want to put it that way, component or aspect of itself, or a logic aspect of itself. But the bottom line is that art is contributive to our lives in a very important way that most of us will never understand. It's invaluable. And so if we can really begin to connect those dots and convey that, to our community, I think that they will embrace it more.
Heather, do you want to say something about your support of Black artists?
Yes. I mean, in any given year, the Jazz Institute contracts with up to 150 musicians. And a lot of that is both, like I talked about, legacy, like tribute concerts to, the music of, but it also gives a lot of musicians the opportunity to create new work. We just recorded at the Garfield Park Conservatory with Coco, Elysses and Angel Bat Daweed to celebrate Women's History Month. Being among the plants and hearing live music was transcendental. It was an unbelievable experience. We have a new program that's funded by the Mellon Foundation, New Works, Fresh Voices. Who are those musicians that maybe have been on the side all the time or always supporting, that really need an opportunity to compose new music? And we were approached by the Mellon Foundation because of Chicago's innovation and story in the history of jazz. And also looking at those 20 somethings, we have a fellowship program as well that kind of cultivates that next generation of jazz musician. Yes, they're standing on the shoulders. Yes, they know how to play So What and all those tunes, but what are they doing to move the music into this next generation? And how can we be a part of making sure that they can do that and be supported, whether that's financially or with venue relations, teaching them how to market themselves, etc. So definitely a long list, from national acts on the jazz festival stage to other acts that are up and coming as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think Chicago's is the only jazz festival of its size and kind that still remains free. So when we talk about accessibility, which is often one of the barriers to participation for our community, if we can just get them downtown, to Millennium Park, they will be able to enjoy, hopefully this year, but right, certainly by 2022, this live experience, celebrating on the smaller stages a lot of the rising talent, rising stars, as well as jazz heroes. So Monique, when we think about the Southside Community Arts Center, there's just so much to say about the people who have trained there, the people who have exhibited there, the kinds of programs that you've done that have allowed younger people to learn about the arts. In what ways do you see the Southside's role going forward in terms of supporting Black artists?
So, interestingly enough, we're looking for new opportunities to do that every day. So we're working with a group of younger artists to help us expand our reach, to help us meet and collaborate with new artists that we haven't had a chance to work with before. We certainly have been discussing some potential things with a couple of artists, a artist space going back to the days of 1940 and 1950, where, that was what was on our plate before COVID. And now we're just trying to figure out how to get it done in the midst of this. But we were looking to do like a Saturdays only for the artists, where they would come and they go back to, being together, having a space that they can talk and communicate. And certainly it's different when you do that virtually than it is when you actually have the opportunity to come in and chat. When we think about, we're still going to be doing our exhibitions, we're still doing our talks, we're still doing tours, we're still doing shows, panel discussions, we're still doing a lot of that. And what it's important for us to do is to have an integration of both the old and the new. And by that, I mean the established and the emerging. And that is because there's a pivotal opportunity to learn from, where I'm also having a conversation tomorrow, as a matter of fact, with another artist who wants to engage Black female artists, because as in most things, they have told me and shared with me that it's still very male dominated in the art world. And so there's an opportunity for us to do more work bringing female voices to the table in a much more broader, where the exhibition is focused around the Black female artists. And so when I think about what's ahead for the Southside Community Arts Center, I'd say lots more of the same and a whole lot of new opportunities to engage in ways that we might not have considered before. As I mentioned, we've got a state grant that we're moving towards, and that is to have an outdoor space as well, and for outdoor programming, because the house is it's kind of tight. And so we want to have space and opportunity for us to do more outdoor programming. And that's something that we know appeals to the community. We also know that it appeals to a broad-based audience. So when I think about what's ahead, I literally could sit here and name off a ton of things that we're working towards making happen. Certainly we need funding support to do some of those things, but a lot of it is just expanding and engaging and telling our stories so that more people join the table. When we did that presentation with the Black photographers, the gentleman who approached us was out of Paraguay. And he said, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely, because it just took us to a new audience that we would not have, who wouldn't have heard of the Southside Community Arts Center before. When people ask me, who do we want to mirror ourselves after? There's so many great institutions across the country that it would be wonderful to do some type of collaborative work with the Museum of Harlem, the Smithsonian. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for us to do work to expand our art message. And so from that standpoint, we are still evolving, we're creating, and we are working and opening the doors to new talent, existing talent, and we just want to continue holding that banner and carrying that torch.
Great. I'm struck by this idea of bringing the artists together in ways they can critique and share. And I think a lot about some of the artist collectives that existed, the Photographers Collective, Camrioji, I never say it right, where the photographers came into a community and critiqued each other's work and challenged each other. The same is true for Romeo Bearden and all the people who were part of Spiral. That part of it was not just about being exhibited, but it was about how they could excel, how they could better their work. What were the other areas that they needed to explore? What new techniques or strategies? I want to just mention one thing, and then we're going to go to some of the questions from our audience and in the chat. And I want to encourage those who are with us live today. If you have a question, this is the time to put it in the chat. And for those of you who might be tuning in, you'll get the benefit of their inquiry when you see the show. But it does seem to me that there is a unique opportunity that each of you have right now to broaden the audience, understanding that you're rooted in cultural heritage, you're rooted in the traditions that have come before. But with this reckoning, if you will, there is this expanded desire by non-traditional audiences for us to engage in the work that you are doing. And so as much as we are rooted in community, I'm curious about the degree to which you see it as important or an opportunity to invite those who have recognized what they don't know about our cultural heritage and what they'd like to learn? And how might you go about that? That's my last big question. Then we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. So is anybody wanting to respond to that? I don't know that all of you have to, but I'm curious about how you're thinking about expanding audiences beyond the Black community.
Well, I don't think that we've never not extended, sharing our art with other communities. It's just that we tell our stories. It's no different than going to the theater and seeing the majority of movies, let's say, or if you go to mainstream theater, the majority of it is other than ourselves. So that was one of the reasons ETA was founded. And by the way, we had discussed that, but ETA is how it's pronounced now. Meaning food for the head, which is what the theater and the arts, all of the arts are. So we welcome all communities to come. It's a place to learn more about us, to find out, by the way, we're human too. And we shared a lot of the same experiences as do you. That may just be differently, but we are not going to change our mission to make them more comfortable if they're uncomfortable with the story, but certainly, yes, all people are welcome. And we also collaborate. I mean, we all have to be honest here. Foundations are who foundations are. They are not limited to being a Black foundation. They are often, very wealthy, white grounded organizations. So no, we're very, open to welcome them in as sponsors, as subscribers, as fans, patrons, but we will remain ETA.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that came up in the chat had to do with going back to COVID for just a moment. That the pandemic really did cripple many organizations. As we all know, millions of dollars have been lost in the economy, not only for specific organizations or individual organizations, but the cumulative impact of the pandemic on the arts sector and on the adjacent industries, commercial industries, restaurants, hotels, et cetera, parking garages of the shutdown has been profound. But it's also been a time of brilliant discoveries. Oh, we can do this. Oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, here's somebody for me to collaborate with. So what new brilliant ideas have you and your organization discovered to better serve your constituency? Heather?
Yeah, we're excited for the summer. We don't know how many people are going to be able to gather. We're just waiting for the world to tell us. At the same time, recognizing that people are looking to arts organizations for recovery, for healing, and to signal, okay, it must be, if you're having that, it must be okay for me to go out. But two really, really exciting things we're doing this summer, again, to get back to the idea of people in the community. We have changed our Latin Jazz Fest to a drive-in experience. Our partners at the Park District were very successful with their movies in the park. So to me, that's allowing people, and some of the spaces will be set up if you want to walk and set up your picnic. If you don't have a car, I don't want that to be a barrier either. The other thing we'll be doing in at least one neighborhood on the south side is a promenade of projections that I talked about before, projecting concerts that could be you could experience it just by driving with pack up the kids, pack up some snacks and kind of drive by and see the visuals, or we'll have seats set up. And so it's been really exciting to think about how we can once again infuse communities with jazz music. The other idea that came out with our fellows program and with our New Works Fresh Voices, the idea for last summer was to have been, let's put them at not icons, but assets of communities that you wouldn't necessarily think of. A vacant lot, a mural, a community garden. And one of my staff, as we were realizing this was going to have to change for next summer, one of my staff members said, wait a minute, if we're recording at these spaces, we can bring the vibrancy of our neighborhoods into homes that never would have, yes, they may have gone to La Follette Park and South Shore Cultural Center to see jazz concerts, but they never would have gone to 71st in South Chicago to see a mural, right? So bringing that vibrancy into people's homes is just another way of thinking about how we herald the positive and wonderful things that are going on the south and west sides of Chicago.
That's wonderful. A drive-by music jazz concert. I love it. What about you, Monique? Anything new? What brilliant idea has come up?
So for us, the biggest change has just moving to virtual. We were, as everyone had come to know, we were the place that you came inside. There was no virtual anything. So we learned quite fast, and in some cases with great stress and duress, we learned how to bring our story to the virtual table. We did the first Bronzeville Art District trolley tours, virtual trolley tours monthly. We are pivoting and putting most of our shows in a virtual format. We also have been using the tools of Eventbrite to help us really kind of navigate and moderate who and how many people can come in at one time, because we actually have had some exhibitions. In fact, we've got one this coming up soon where we will allow people in, but we've got to make sure, because of the size of the house, that it is a smaller group at one time. So we have used tools that we really were not used to using before. We're doing videos. I'm learning, we're learning. And I've got a new group of minds that are at the table that are younger. A lot of them are being very creative about how we do things, what we see and say, and how we promote our business, the marketing aspects. And so when I think about a new programming, that's really where my mind goes first, is just how we are now delivering those programs. That's been the newest take for us. And we're still trying to figure out what else we can do in the meantime. In addition to, we're doing some more collaborations. We are collaborating more with universities around leveraging their students, because they're also working virtually and from home. We've got a tremendous asset in our collections and archives, and working with different universities to help us collate and document those things, because they've been sitting there in boxes, and there's been a lot of history that is packed away, and they're helping us to unpack it in a way that we will be able to leverage it.
Yeah, that's great. And I love this idea of collaborating with the local universities and the research opportunities that it provides for students, but the benefit that it brings to you. And that brings me to a question about how you all are documenting what it is. You are stewards of a particular era in the long life of these institutions, and you inherited a lot, but you also are doing a lot. So how do you think about documenting your stories, the story of your institutions, in ways that future generations will be able to encounter them? And does that have a cost? And if so, where do you turn for documentation resources? And then I have another question for you from Ife that I want to bring to the table. So maybe one or two of you take this one on, and then we'll go on to that question.
That's actually a challenge of this year. Before, as I was doing my budget this year, it was like video and photography documentation. We'd have a photographer come out. Now we have to remember to take screenshots of the Zooms and whatnot. There's actually a book that's right here, Seeing Black Futures, that's about that. It's about how are we documenting all of the art that's coming out in the world now, because there's so much more between, musicians can put things on TikTok, Bandcamp, like how do you, so that I don't have an answer to, but I just think it's an interesting time. I mean, we record things like we always do. You know, we keep notes and the minutes of our board meetings and things like that. But you're right. Actually, Larry, who was on the board, he just passed recently, he was on the board of Southside Community Arts Center, would always say, you have to archive today for tomorrow. Like, what are we doing today? And so I hear him saying that all the time is, wait, we have to take the pictures and tell the story now, because there are boxes of clippings and things you can go through. And that's changing. So it's a challenge to remember to be able to do that.
And one thought that came from another city was to collectively, so it's a collaborative opportunity, build something every January that's called the year. That is from arts, theater, music, dance. The leaders would sit around a table and say, here are the top 5 from what we did. Here are the 5 things that we learned. Here are the 5 things that we won't do again. Or these are the new ideas that emerged, or these are the things, whatever it is, but that there is a sort of a debrief that the collective cultural leaders would come together to do, to create the yearbook, if you will, for the past year, and then to make sure that that was available in all of your institutions and at a place like Ensemble, Chicago History Museum, etc. So thinking about it, this is yet another role that you as arts administrators have to think about, not only what we're doing now and what's going to be ahead and what's the vision and how we drive to that, but also what we preserve from what the work has been. And so Ife's question, thank you for the question, Ife, is, you know, if you're like, what led you to be interested in becoming an arts administrator, and what has been the most satisfying thing about that work for you? And, you know, like, why would you even think about running an arts organization in today's environment? So Monique, you're smiling. Kai, or whoever wants to jump in there first. Kai?
So I'll go ahead. It's funny because in the interview, the question was asked of me, so how do you go from being an executive editor, right, to an executive director of a theater? And it sounds like they're very far apart, but the truth of the matter is, whether it's broadcast, print, film, or stage, the executive, whatever, editor, producer, director, you provide the leadership, you know, to achieve the end goal. And so it wasn't difficult for me, and I can't profess to know everything about the theater, but I do understand leadership, and I do understand how to empower, I call them the team rather than the staff, those who to do what they love and to produce what they're responsible for, so that together, you know, we produce the end product that we want. So it's, you know, it goes back to the question you asked earlier, Amina. I was just prepared for it all my life. I didn't know that, though. You know, I didn't make that choice like consciously. I made the choice to be, you know, a journalist. And then all of a sudden it was like, you know, I remember, and it's very important that I shared this. I remember in the 80s, and I think because I met you in the 80s, I mean, you had just come to Chicago and go to the Ensemble Museum, but I had been offered a job at Elle magazine to be a contributing editor. And I was very excited about it. I thought, oh, you know, I've made it, you know, it's an international magazine and blah, 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 blah. That was in the beginning of the day. By the end of the day, I began to think about, but what articles, you know, am I going to write? Who is my readership? Where is what I write? Where is it going to land? And what became important to me at that time is understanding everything that you brought to our attention in terms of questions. You know, what difference do you make in your community? Well, how was I going to make that community? I mean, make that difference in my community at that time through Elle magazine, which is a wonderful magazine. But at that time, there were very few anything about Black anything, you know, in there. So I have always chosen us. I choose us because I want to. And I think that we want to change the idea that if you do choose us, somehow you didn't make the cut to work for the other people, because I think people think that. But it's important for those of us who do to bring a certain kind of respect, and integrity to what we're doing in our communities and how we do it. So
I love that.
So
Wow.
I love, well, first of all, I love the word integrity, because that just resonates to my core. There was an opportunity and there was a serious need when I came to interview for the position of executive director. And it was too important for me, I was a former board member, to just not, there was such a need at that moment in time to know that you have certain skills that you bring to the table, that the organization in this moment, in this time, really resonate and could benefit from. And it is an opportunity, and it was an opportunity to give back in a way that I knew was going to be really meaningful. And you're right. I think about that book, The Alchemist, and it talks about the layers of our journey and how if you hadn't passed through all of those things, if I hadn't run 4 different financial institutions, I wouldn't understand some of the pieces of running historic organizations. A lot of times people think things are very different. And what I find is that they're very similar. There are words that are different. There are certainly nuances, but running a business, managing a team, running facilities, the creative component, it's about bringing the right people to the table, having certain knowledge. And I think that's a lot more similar than dissimilar, and that this is an opportunity that it was just so important. It's certainly when people think about why would I go into this type of work, I think you have to have a passion for it. As Kai was saying, if you don't have a passion for it, you're going to be dissuaded by so many of the challenges that you're going to face. And there are going to be a lot of challenges. We typically don't have money that just flows through the door. We typically got to work really hard to produce, to promote, to brand, to bring in the right people. It's certainly not for money. That I can say. It's not for the money, but it is for the
Can we testify it's not for the money, y'all? Put your hand up. Put your hand up. Okay.
Oh, God, both hands. But it is such, my husband said to me the other day, he said, you're working, so he's like, you still got something to do? It's like 8 or 9 o'clock. And it is, I'm loving this so much. And yes, it does require a lot. But it's a passion piece right now. It is about the passion of the work. It is about the integrity of the work. It is about the meaning. And each of us is able to now take the organizations to the next tranche of this leg in the journey. You said something earlier, and I didn't really comment yet, but I want to go back to it for a second. You talked about documenting, and quite frankly, this past year has been so busy and about being and doing and just surviving and making things happen that I haven't spent as much time with the documenting. We've got the documents of what we've done, but I think that's a pivotal opportunity for us to really think. We're living through this pandemic moment, but I think it is a real opportunity for us to carve out some time to really record for future generations who really won't understand in 10 years necessarily. We hope we don't have another one of these crazy things, but they really won't understand the depths of what this meant and how critically important. Some of the funders, they asked the question, it said, will you survive? And without hesitation, I knew that yes, we would survive. somehow, some way, it was like, I go back to thinking about Malcolm. And by any means, we are going to survive. We are going to figure out if we got to get out there with, like Dr. Burroughs, with cans, with, collecting dimes and coins. We're going to survive. But I really want to see us thrive at this point. And that's really the goal and the passion, to see how do we take this crazy moment in time. And despite, we always talk about the bad things, but despite the bad things that are occurring around us, there's so much meat and they're so fulfilling, in terms of what we can do. So I'm super excited to be a part of this moment. But if your people are considering this is about a passion piece. You've really got to have the heart for it.
Yeah, temerity. You've got to bring temerity to it.
Yes.
And I loved also, just understanding that this is such a critical moment to be documented, because 20 years from now, 10 years from now, people will look back to this for the examples of how you got over, right? How you made it through as institutions. And we looked back to the 30s, we look back to the 40s, we look back to the 60s for the examples of challenging moments and how those who preceded us got through and what they left us as a result. We're going to wrap up here in our last few minutes. I want to give Heather a chance to respond to anything that we've said, and then I've got a couple of comments and one final question for you. So Heather, do you want to add something briefly?
I just want to say again, so happy that we were able to talk to so many about the work we do to talk about art history, Black history. If everyone under the sound of my voice could really take some time to look at what each of these organizations has done, how they started, what their impact has been on the world of art, on the world of American history. There's some fascinating stories. And it just makes me super proud as a woman born, raised, and still living on the South Side of Chicago to be able to say, this is who we are. Because to me, this is truly who we are. And I cannot wait to see how we all lead the healing that needs to come, whether it's through our all of our artists, visual artists, musicians, educators, actors, people in the community that are looking for music and so desperately need to hear the stories that we're all telling together. So I am grateful that you all exist. Amina, all that you've done for arts and culture in Chicago and beyond is just incredible. So just very glad that we have a chance to share all of our stories with the world through the Jazz Institute of Chicago. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And this is the beginning of a conversation.
Yes.
And we will invite others to the conversation. But it is, I think, really essential that you take the moment to stop, to reflect, to share, to support, to do a shout out, all of those good things. And so it's my great pleasure to be able to join you all today for this. I heard a couple of really important things today, that there is a vibrancy about these organizations that continues to reverberate out in serving community, that there is a commitment to the next generation and ensuring that they see the broad possibilities of how arts can infuse their life with meaning and creativity, and that can take them wherever, can be carried with them in whatever role they choose. That for you as organizations, there's a real importance to understanding this whole area of communications and promoting and inviting and engaging and sustaining that cycle of interaction with the potential audiences that you see coming in, both the existing members and members out there. We are so grateful for you today, and we encourage you up your, go ahead and do a 2-year membership, a 3-year membership. I give them those resources now to work with and just be proud of your association with them. But that visibility and marketing is something that we need, that increasingly we're the older generation. And so we need to bring younger people and younger ideas into the mix about both the communication and what it is we're communicating about the art itself, right? And so I think it was Kai who said, we are dynamic institutions, that this is not static, that arts are dynamic, that they are always changing. And we need to be open to that change. We need to invite that change. We need to cultivate what that continued evolution of whatever the discipline is for our audiences and for the future. I want to end by asking you each to just very quickly think back over the long history of your institutions and the individuals who have performed on your stages, exhibited on your walls, been in conversation in your halls, created the work that was produced, and just so that people have a sense of the extraordinary legacy that you collectively hold. Maybe just, we're going to do a little roll call of the ancestors or the current dynamic artists who are working that have graced your halls and your work. So I'm going to begin with the oldest institution, because they could do a roll call of about an hour or so, and ask Monique if she would just name, among the many luminaries, just name 2 or 3 that have been associated with Southside Community Arts Center.
I got to start with Dr. Margaret Burroughs, Charles White, Gordon Parks. I'm thinking Gwendolyn Brooks. Theaster Gates.
Okay,
Carrie
that's
Jane
5.
Marshall.
That's 5. That's 5. That's 5. See what I mean?
Okay, who do I have to leave out? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, and it's hard. It's like a Sophie's choice. Who among my many children am I going to choose? So I'm going to go to you, Kai, next, because again, lots of people.
Ruby D, Ossie Davis, Maya Angelou, Jennifer Hudson, Oscar Jr.
Okay, so you see that none of them really pay attention when I say 1 or 2. Okay, just saying. Okay, she did 4. Monique did 4/5/20. Heather, who's come across your stages? Who has Jazz Institute produced?
So I don't know where to begin, because we started with the Jazz Festival in 1979. And even before that, it was a tribute to Duke Ellington. So you'll see names like Ella Fitzgerald, and on down, of course, to our Chicago folks like Nicole Mitchell, Dee Alexander, and I don't want to say too many because I'm gonna forget somebody and I'm gonna get a text.
Get in trouble, right?
But and Howard Reich, who just retired from the Tribune, made a point that, our early jazz concerts included people who had come up under the likes of, Kid Ory and people that started jazz in Chicago. So when you look at the Jazz Institute, you're really looking at the arc of jazz history from the beginning, 100 years ago, now and into the future. So that's it just makes me extremely proud to think about all of those collective moments on the Jazz Festival stage, but also in communities at JazzCity and programs like that.
So audience, we are so grateful that you joined us today. I hope you got some insights, maybe learned a thing or two that you didn't know about one of these institutions or all of these institutions. I once again want to encourage you to become members, to send a donation, $10, $25, $50, $100. You don't have to, philanthropy is your heart. It's about your heart and your heart wanting to support the activity that you see there. So please, please, please think about these 4. In a future conversation, we might also be able to add some dance, because dance was not here,
Yes.
or some of our writing community, because rich resources abide there. But I think what we've done today is celebrate what that heritage is, reminded people of the important work that is ahead, and reflected with gratitude on everything that we've inherited that has inspired us. I want to thank our tech crew, Adriana and Mashawn Hardy, for the great work that you've done in supporting us. And in particular, I want you all to join me in a round of finger snaps or applause for Heather Ireland Robinson from the Jazz Institute of Chicago, Monique Brinkman-Hill from the Southside Community Arts Center, Kai El-Zabar from ETA, the ETA Creative Arts Foundation, and yours truly, Amina Dickerson. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Amina.
All righty. See you next time.